Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Screenwriting Tips. I'm Tony D. Today's screenwriting tips are all about spec scripts. What are they? What should you do? What shouldn't you do? All right, let's define the terms. Spec, S-P-E-C, script. Spec script, short for speculation or speculative script. It is a script that, pretty much any script you've written, but you weren't hired to write, that's a spec script. It can also be that a producer comes to you and says, hey, will you write this script on spec? And you might do it that way. But just keep in mind that if a producer does approach you to write a script on spec, he is basically saying, will you write this script for free? And at that moment, you have a decision to make. Now, it may be that you're very new to screenwriting and that writing a spec script will be good practice for you, so you'll do it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get your terms and things straightened out. If a producer asks you to write on spec, the first thing you need to know and need to get in writing is who owns the script once this producer leaves the picture. So, and also keep in mind, he may never leave the picture, so you essentially are working for free. Don't let a producer talk you into working for free, okay? You should get something for your work. You should get money. If the producer refuses to give your money, you have a choice. You can walk away. You could say, well, I'll write the script on spec. I'll give you 2 years to raise the money. After that, I own the script outright, completely, 100%. And you're out of the picture, unless you bring money to the table. Because this is show business, and it's about money, and it's about your money if you are serious about doing this. So don't just agree to write a script on spec. Now that being said, your own projects that you are writing for spec, you're writing for yourself. And you own them outright, which means you can sell them outright as well when the time comes. Now, unfortunately, spec scripts, it's very difficult to sell a script like that. Let's see, have I done it? I've had a spec script produced. Didn't really get, did I get money for it? Yeah, I've gotten money for it. Yeah, I didn't get a lot. They weren't feature length. The feature lengths I was hired to do. However, it is worth your time to write spec scripts for yourself, simply because it gives you a good sample. It gives you scene samples. You can draw from them and send them about and say, here's a sample. Additionally, spec scripts are useful if they are in the genre that's currently popular, right? So back in the day, in the 90s, when X-Files was big, X-File type scripts were very big. So they wanted conspiracy, UFO stuff, all that kind of, anything related to X-Files, everybody was looking for. Right around that time, thrillers were big. So if you had a thriller and you had written it on spec, you could shop it around. And when I say shop it around, these days, in the old days it was, you had to read Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and publications like that. There were screenwriting newsletters. I was getting some of those. I was getting Variety delivered to me on the East Coast like every 2 weeks. And they would come and it was daily Variety, so I would get like one big weekly pile of them. And I would go through the back and see if there were any producers looking for scripts. And then I would send to them. Now, a lot of times I never heard back. Sometimes I'd hear back. A lot of times, unfortunately, there are a lot, which is why I have such a bad attitude about LA. A lot of the LA guys just wasted my time. Now with the advent of the internet, things are a lot easier. There are plenty of websites to take your spec script on. There are screenplay sites that analyze scripts and rate them, and you get points for rating other people's scripts, and then you use those points to get more attention to your script, and you try to rise to the top. It's a whole different thing now. But it is a good way to try to get your script out there. You have to be very wary of those sites too, because they are sometimes keyed into if you're, you know, if you're putting your screenplay synopsis and log lines and stuff and you sell it through the site has some, I don't know, some portion of your I don't know if it's the money or if they get first look or whatever. So be very wary of sites like that. You know, you have to be wary of everything in this business because there's so many people who are either shifty or they just don't know what they're doing. It goes true for people you collaborate with. Now, I'm of the mind, and most people are, that, you know, most people aren't out to get you. They're not. But most people also inflate their own egos and remember the past very romantically when it comes to themselves. So if you have a situation where you've collaborated with people on a screenplay and many years have passed, but you did most of the work, often the people you collaborated with have a different view of who did all the work. And they maybe think they did more of the work, or they did an equal amount, or, you know, they tend to inflate their own memories and romanticize it, and they don't remember every little thing. So if you collaborate on a spec script and then lose touch with the people you collaborated with, you're kind of stuck, right? Because you're still tied into these people. You still have to cut these people in if you do get a sale, and meanwhile you're shopping the damn thing around, you know, and you're essentially working for the other people. I've been tied in with a few different people over the years who I worked with on scripts. I wrote the scripts for them or whatever, and I have no regrets in that area, but looking back on it, I would have done things differently. And the number one thing I would have done is I would have put something in writing that said after a period of time, what would happen. So in other words, after 2 years, 3 years, you can even go a long time. Say, I'll give you 5 years. Because life is long. Give them all the time you think your friend needs, and these people are often your friends at the time. Give them whatever time period they think they need, and at the end of that time, something happens. So either maybe they pay you, that would be ideal, but if not, then whoever's still shopping around the script or wants to should get to own the script. Because the person doing all that work for all those years really deserves more. And it doesn't mean you can't acknowledge those people or cut them in anyway, but the problem is if the opposite happens. The opposite would be you don't get things on paper, you don't get things straight, you write this screenplay, they fade, your collaborators fade into the distance, and then it's 5, 10 years later, and you sell the script, and it's a mega hit. Now, money's flowing, and then guess what? These people show up on your doorstep with a lawyer, and they want their cut. So, it happens. It's happened. So, do yourself a favor. Get that stuff squared away in the beginning of your working relationship. Now, more often than not, if you're working on, you know, just low budget stuff, it's sort of hit or miss, right? You are either hired, like often I'm hired to write the screenplay for the producer. It's his idea, so I already know the deal. I'm going to get paid, I write their ideas, I make it work in a screenplay form, and then I get paid and then I'm out. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's a work for hire situation. But for a spec script, it's different. You also have to have a price in your brain that you're willing to let go of the script and walk away and understand how movies work. They may change the whole damn thing and screw it all up. The main thing you want to protect is your money and your credit. So, you know, if you're lucky and you have a little more sway in the contract, or your friend's willing to give you more leeway, you could put little clauses in. You can put whatever you want. Harlan Ellison famously had a clause in his contract that if he didn't like the end result, the film, After he saw it, he could change his credit to Cornelius P. Bird or F. Bird or whatever, which was like giving, or Cornelius T. Bird, because giving the bird was basically, you know, he's giving the bird to the producers for screwing up his screenplay. But, you know, you probably won't have that kind of pull. Harlan Ellison had, you know, balls of steel, and he also had a big name at the time. So, a pretty big name. I mean, he was known. And so he could kind of do that stuff, and he would demand that stuff, and, you know, that's perfectly fine. You can ask for whatever you want, pretty much in a contract. If people are willing to give it to you, they'll give it to you. Guys who don't know what they're doing will definitely give it to you, because they'll say, okay, sure, why not? Guys who have been in the business will hopefully just pay you. That they'll have a number in mind that makes sense. So what would be a number in mind for a spec script? Well, again, it all comes back to the magic 2% of the total budget. So, you know, if they're doing a movie and it's super low budget and they're only going to spend 100 grand, you're good with, you should be good with 2 grand. I mean, really. If it's your magnum opus and you don't want to give it away for 2 grand, believe me, I understand. But you know, a movie that only costs 100 grand, that's an acceptable payday. You know, you could always cry for more, and they might give it to you. They might give it to you. I mean, a movie that with that low of a budget, what's another couple of grand? Certainly with $1 million budget and up, you should get a good payday. 20K for $1 million budget, absolutely. Once you get to 10 million, you're talking real Hollywood numbers. That's a Hollywood low budget movie, 10 million. That's when you get to the 200,000 mark. And that, I believe, something around 200,000 is the guild minimum. So if you're on a union gig, you're basically getting 200K minimum, plus all the bells and whistles that come with rewrites, that come with you know, working on the set, that come with anything that's created from the movie after that. It's a very complicated calculation, and that's why big major movie studios hire tons and tons of accountants and finance people and agents. I mean, these guys, a lot of them, their jobs is just to hunt down money that's already been made, that the studio just forgot to pay out, because they have to pay out quite a bit of money over the years. I mean, it's just, you know, they rake in millions and millions of dollars, and they have to pay out millions and millions of dollars. You know, they're getting most of it, but there's a lot of payout, and it's complicated, and there could be all kinds of little things. So you may be in a situation where you have to contact a lawyer or an agent and figure out what money you're owed. And that may be that the studio is trying to save money, but it's just as likely they just dropped the ball and didn't pay you. It happens. I haven't been on a lot of studio stuff. I've been on the fringes of it, so it hasn't been an issue for me. But I'm sure, you know, for big names, obviously it's not an issue. They make sure name people get their money. You know, if you're a major Hollywood movie star, they're not going to want to piss you off under any circumstances. Even if you're old and sort of past your prime, they're not going to piss you off, because you could always resurface and your career could make a comeback, and they don't want the bad press of, oh, so-and-so studio didn't pay you. Okay, but getting back to spec scripts. Should you write them, and what kind of scripts should you write on spec? Well, you want to write scripts that are current, that people want. The superhero stuff right now, I believe, is finally coming to its end. So superhero stuff, if you got a superhero movie, you better write it fast. I think the trend is pretty much over. We have to start looking to the next trend. Not sure what that is. In the world of movies, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Netflix, so you should definitely tune into that, because that's an avenue to get screenplays done. And the stuff that's going on there is pretty wild. So I think, you know, there are windows of time when the trend, nobody knows what the new trend's going to be. So we may be in one of those trends. Definitely part of the trend right now, and this trend is also going to die, but it's probably going to die sometime after the superheroes, is and I've talked about this before, the diversity trend. You know, the trend of doing, well, let's do an all-black cast movie. Oh, let's do an all-trans movie. Oh, let's do, you know, movie empowering women and all this kind of stuff. Hollywood will beat that to death. They're right on the verge. And if you saw my Captain Marvel prediction, you heard some of my opinions on that. They've definitely worn out their welcome in Star Wars, doing it there. It's going to collapse at some point. At that moment, it's probably going to tend to shift the other way. We're probably going to get a spate of sort of manly men movies, I think. More traditional classic movies. If I had to guess, it will probably go back to something like, you know, classic movies. Maybe detectives, who knows? That was a trend for such a long time. I miss the days of detective movies and detective TV shows. I grew up on that stuff, and it was a lot of fun because you had to be smart to watch those movies and write them. You had to figure out the mystery. The mystery was always key. And so we'll see what the next big trend is. Hard to predict. I mean, definitely a lot of political stuff has happened, and that's been in the culture. So it's possible that it could be a wave of political movies. I don't know. Hollywood tends to be bad on that because they're so hyper partisan to begin with. Again, I made the political thriller movie and I addressed some of that, but since they're so hyper partisan, you know, unless they're willing to buck the trend and go, hey, it's time to make a bunch of movies about conservatism, which would be an interesting trend to exploit, I think. It's definitely an audience that in the United States hasn't gotten their share of movies really in recent years. There's been a handful. You don't have to blast me. I know it was the Sniper movie and a couple other gung-ho American movies. I'm not really talking about them or even the, you know, adaptations of Ayn Rand. I'm talking about movies that instead of having such hardcore liberal values, that maybe some of them have more traditional conservative values. I think there's definitely a market for that. There's been a few production companies that have tried to do that. There's definitely a little bit of a niche market, but Hollywood's never really tackled that, you know, since like the 50s. And that's a long time. So you never know. Generation Z is skewing more conservative. So that may be in the crosshairs in the next 5 years or so. But we'll see. It could be something completely else. Something else. I don't know. You never know. Something could hit. Usually what will happen, I think, is something just, for whatever reason, hits big. Everybody goes crazy for it. You know, with the X-Files, it was just a phenomenon. Everybody went nuts for the X-Files. And then it was like, we gotta do everything X-Files. And I remember that time period because I'm trying to push my comedies and nobody wanted them. They all wanted this conspiracy nonsense. Oh, so serious. You know, it's hard to do comedies. So, getting back to Spec, what should you write? Besides trying to hit one of these trends, it's good to write stuff that's universal. The low-budget stuff that sells overseas, as I said in another video, action, TNA, and horror. So get yourself a good horror screenplay, I would say. Number one on your list. Typical low-budget movie is a horror movie. Action, TNA, I mean, you could do them. They're a little harder to sell. They tend to have bigger budgets. You know, unless you're going to do like softcore porn. And there is a market for porn scripts if you can get in there. I've tried a couple times, but it never worked out. I, of course, wouldn't want my name on any of this stuff. Once you get the taint of porn, it's kind of hard to get off of you. So if you do decide to write some erotica, ghostwrite it is my advice, or use a fake name, a nom de plume, if you will, and don't use your real name, because it'll make it harder for you to write regular movies if you write porn. Now that's, you know, and I'm talking porn. I'm not talking like, you know, erotica or you know, an erotic thriller or something that is basically mainstream, yeah, you can sell that and not sort of get that taint. But so I would definitely write a low budget horror movie, any low budget movie, you know, that you can write. Crime dramas are good in low budget because crime drama doesn't require any special effects really. They'll have a little bit of action, but you can keep the action pretty low key, and you know, they tend to be exciting. Any drama really. I say crime drama because that's what I tend to gravitate towards too, because I write a lot of mafia stuff. But really, any drama, if you have a drama, that's good. So you have that romance. That's fairly universal. And then you want your sort of Hollywood showcase piece, and that should probably be the one that's kind of in the trend. If you do a superhero one now, though, just be wary that it may be sitting on your shelf forever, or until the wheel turns a big way and it comes back to superheroes. Maybe keep it open enough that you can make it sci-fi if you have to on a rewrite, something like that. You know, you can always rewrite something and you know, repackage it. And you can always do the classics. You can do a Western, you can do, you know, romance, you can do chase movies, road trip movies, buddy movies, you know, any of the sort of Hollywood staples you see that they're still making. I would stay away from comedy. Right now, it just seems like you can't please anyone. Although that could be the next trend. It could be outrageous comedies. You never know. You never know. It could just finally flip and somebody could come out with an outrageous comedy and finally people give up all this PC nonsense and we could all laugh again. Boy, I would love that. I would love that. So should you write a spec script? Yes, for yourself. If you write it for anybody else, get something in writing. Get some damn money or get something. Get something in writing so you know who owns the rights. And you're not wasting your time working on a screenplay that's never going to see the light of day. All right, that's it for screenwriting tips. My name is Tony D. You can find me still at Patreon, and you can check me out on the Webcomic Factory and Superfrat, my comic websites where I write all kinds of stuff. And leave a comment in the comments section. And if you're seeing this on BitChute or YouTube, you're seeing it early because I had to do my video early for Wednesday because I got lots of stuff going on this week. And but you can also see the videos on Superfrat. So if you're looking for some of the old videos and YouTube and BitChute aren't your cup of tea, you can always go to the Superfrat site where I post the videos. Okay, that's it. Thank you.